Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you something that might hit close to home. Have you ever felt like the version of you right now isn't enough? Like you're in this weird in-between space, not where you used to be, but not quite where you want to be either? We often rush to get to the better version of ourselves, the one who's more confident, calm, and in control. But what if I told you that version isn't out there waiting for you? They're being built right here, right now. You may not feel like you're doing anything extraordinary, but this version of you, the one who's showing up even through doubt, fear, and fatigue, is already laying the foundation for something deeply powerful. Because in every quiet choice you make today, you're planting the seeds of the peace, confidence, and clarity that your future self will thank you for. Let's talk about that version of you. Your future self is shaped by the small choices you make today. It sounds simple, but it holds the weight of transformation. Often, we look at our lives through the lens of what hasn't happened yet, what we've missed, or what we think should have come by now. We focus on the big break, the perfect opportunity, or the moment when everything clicks. But in doing so, we overlook the truth. The real transformation doesn't happen in the spotlight. It happens in the quiet, unglamorous, everyday decisions that seem small in the moment, but they echo into the future in ways we can't yet see. Think about it, the choice to get out of bed when everything in you wants to stay under the covers, the decision to reach out instead of isolate, the moment you choose to believe in yourself again, even if just for today. These aren't massive, headline-making events, but they're the brushstrokes that paint the masterpiece of your future. We are creatures of habit more than we are creatures of motivation. That means the things we repeat daily, the small behaviors, thoughts, and patterns become the architecture of our identity. You don't become confident overnight. You become confident by making a habit of keeping promises to yourself. You don't become disciplined through one big gesture. It's born in the decision to show up again and again, even when you don't feel like it. That text you choose not to send, that phone call you finally make, that 10-minute walk you take when you don't want to, that time you open a book instead of scrolling mindlessly. None of these actions feel life-changing when they're happening, but they compound, they build trust in yourself. And over time, they create a shift not just in your behavior, but in how you see yourself. The biggest trap we fall into is waiting for clarity, for motivation, for a sign. But life doesn't usually hand you a sign. It hands you moments, small windows where you get to choose differently. And that's where power lives. That's where identity is rewritten. Small choices also allow you to take back control. When you're overwhelmed by the big picture, the future feels far away and unmanageable. But if you zoom in, if you focus only on what you can do right now, in this moment, suddenly things feel lighter. Your role isn't to figure out your entire life today. Your role is to make one decision that your future self would be proud of. Just one, and then another, and then another. We often want to reinvent ourselves overnight, but real change doesn't work like that. The most honest version of growth is slow, messy, and deeply personal. It's found in those tiny shifts, saying no to what drains you, yes to what feeds you, choosing silence over reacting, choosing honesty over pleasing, choosing to walk away when it would be easier to stay and settle. And here's what makes it beautiful. Your future self doesn't need you to be perfect. They just need you to be intentional, to care enough about where you're headed that you're willing to do the small, unglamorous work today. What feels small right now may become the turning point you only recognize years from now. The job you apply for even when you're scared, the boundaries you set that finally create peace, the night you decide not to text someone who's already shown you they can't love you properly. Those decisions say, I know who I'm becoming and I'm willing to fight for them. You may not be where you want to be yet, and that's okay, but who you're becoming, that version of you is built in the now. Not in the fantasy of someday, not when things are easier, but right here in this exact, ordinary moment. The small choices you make today are not insignificant. They are votes for the future you want to create. They are proof that even when life feels unclear, you are still moving forward, you are still choosing, and those choices, those quiet, consistent decisions, they are shaping a future that is already grateful for the strength you're showing right now. Keeping your head up is a mindset, not a performance. It's one of those truths we often forget in a world that teaches us to look strong even when we feel weak. Somewhere along the way, we started to believe that holding our head high means having it all together, never showing doubt and wearing confidence like armor. But that's not what it truly means. Keeping your head up isn't about faking strength for others to see. It's about choosing to believe in your own worth, even when no one's watching. It's not a show. It's a choice, a quiet, internal shift. You don't keep your head up because everything is perfect. You keep your head up in spite of the chaos, in spite of fear, disappointment, and the moments that break your heart. You keep your head up because you've decided that your circumstances won't define your posture toward life. Even if you're falling apart inside, that act of holding your head high is a rebellion not against the pain, but against the idea that the pain gets to win. Some people think strength is about not crying, not flinching, not showing cracks, but real strength is far more subtle. It's found in those moments where no one would blame you for giving up, but you don't. It's in the way you get out of bed after a sleepless night, in the way you take one more step when the weight on your shoulders feels unbearable. That's not for show, that's not performance, that's mindset. It's resilience in its rawest form. There's a difference between looking strong and being strong. Looking strong can be curated. You can smile through pain. You can post pictures of happiness and still feel lost. But being strong, that's built inside. That's the voice that tells you to try again even when you're tired of trying. That's the belief that you're worthy even when you feel invisible. That's what it means to keep your head up. It's easy to confuse confidence with appearance, but the most confident people aren't always the loudest in the room or the ones with the biggest smiles. Sometimes they are the ones who say the least but carry themselves with quiet dignity. They know who they are. They're not performing for validation. They're living from a place of deep self-respect. Keeping your head up doesn't mean pretending you're okay when you're not. It means allowing yourself to feel the full depth of your experience without collapsing under it. It means standing tall even with trembling knees. It means being kind to yourself in the moments you fall short instead of tearing yourself down. That's not fake. That's not for attention. That's strength that comes from within, the kind no one can take from you. You'll face people who misunderstand this mindset, who think you're too quiet, too soft, too distant. Let them misunderstand, because keeping your head up doesn't mean explaining yourself. It means being grounded in who you are and who you're becoming. It's walking into a room without needing to be the loudest voice, just the clearest. It's about knowing that your presence has weight, even when your words are few. This mindset is also what carries you through the times when you don't feel seen. When no one claps for you, when your wins are private and your battles are invisible, it's in those quiet spaces that your self-belief matters the most. That's when keeping your head up isn't just posture, it's a survival instinct. A refusal to bow down to hopelessness or self-doubt. And when you walk through life with this mindset, people feel it. Not because you're trying to prove anything, but because there's something magnetic about someone who doesn't need to perform. Someone who isn't desperate to impress, but is simply rooted in who they are. That kind of presence is rare and powerful. So remember, keeping your head up isn't about wearing a mask. It's not about convincing the world you're okay. It's about carrying yourself with grace even when you're still figuring things out. It's about choosing dignity, choosing courage, and choosing to face life head on not because it's easy, but because you know who you are beneath it all. That decision, that belief, that's the real strength, not for them, for you. Showing up while tired, scared, or unsure is still strength. We live in a world that often glorifies boldness, clarity, and peak performance. We admire the confident, the composed, the energetic, but the truth is, some of the strongest people aren't the ones who feel fearless, they're the ones who show up even when they don't. They're the ones who keep going when they have every reason to stop. Strength isn't always loud or visible. Sometimes it looks like dragging yourself out of bed when everything in you says stay down. Sometimes it looks like walking into the room even though your hands are shaking. We don't give enough credit to the kind of strength it takes to keep trying when you're not sure you'll succeed, to keep loving when your heart's been broken, to keep hoping when you've faced disappointment. We think strength means being unshakable, but real strength means being human and continuing anyway. You can be unsure and still be brave. You can be scared and still take the next step. You can be tired and still decide that today matters. It's easy to show up when you feel good, when everything is going your way, when the energy is high, when the reward feels close. Showing up doesn't cost you much then, but what about the days when you're worn thin? When your motivation is gone, your doubts are loud, and you're not even sure why you're trying anymore. Those are the days that count the most. Because when you show up in spite of the fear, in spite of the exhaustion, in spite of the mess, that's when you're practicing the kind of strength that truly transforms you. We tend to think we need to wait until we feel ready, until the anxiety passes, until the timing is right, until we're fully healed or completely prepared. But sometimes the healing happens through showing up. Sometimes the clarity comes after you take the step, not before. And sometimes the energy returns only once you've committed to keep moving forward. There's something incredibly powerful about not giving up when no one would blame you if you did. That moment when you decide, I don't feel strong, but I'll still be present, becomes a turning point. It may not feel dramatic or look impressive, but that choice builds something within you. It builds grit. It builds self-trust. It teaches you that you don't have to wait for perfection to act with purpose. And when you show up while tired, you learn how to conserve your energy without losing your direction. You find ways to pace yourself, to breathe in the middle of the chaos, to anchor yourself in the small wins, a quiet moment, a completed task, a few minutes of stillness. That's still strength, that's still progress. When you show up scared, you begin to shift your relationship with fear. Instead of letting it drive your choices, you acknowledge it without letting it lead. You walk alongside it, knowing it's not a sign you're broken, it's a sign that you're stretching. Fear means you're touching something important, and walking into that fear, even with trembling hands, is one of the boldest things a person can do. When you show up unsure, you're not showing weakness, you're embracing humility, you're allowing yourself to be a work in progress, you're not pretending to have all the answers, you're choosing curiosity over control. That openness is where real growth begins. That's where you find the courage to ask questions, to change directions, to try again with better understanding. And here's something most people forget. Strength isn't always about results. It's about the decision to be present, even if you don't perform your best, even if things don't go the way you hoped. The very act of showing up in your most uncertain moments creates a deeper kind of resilience. You prove to yourself that you are more than your fear, more than your tiredness, more than your doubt. That version of strength, the quiet, gritty, imperfect kind, is what builds the foundation for everything else. It's what allows you to keep going when others stop. It's what gives you depth, wisdom, and compassion. Because once you've learned to show up in your own mess, you start to understand just how brave that truly is. This version of you is planting the seeds of confidence, peace, and clarity. That idea might not sound exciting at first, especially if right now you feel stuck, confused, or unsure of who you're becoming. But here's the truth. Every single choice you make today is shaping a future you that feels more grounded, more certain, and more connected to the life you're meant to live. You don't need to have everything figured out to begin. You just need to trust that showing up right now, exactly as you are, has value. The present version of you, with all your flaws, uncertainties, and unfinished parts, is still powerful. Even if you're doubting yourself, even if you feel like you're behind, what you're doing right now matters more than you realize. Confidence doesn't arrive suddenly. Peace doesn't just show up one day. Clarity doesn't come from sitting still and waiting for it. These things grow over time, and they grow from seeds you're planting now, often without realizing it. That moment you said no when it would have been easier to say yes to please others. That was a seed of confidence. That hour you spent alone reflecting instead of distracting yourself. That was a seed of clarity. That conversation you chose to walk away from to protect your peace. That was a seed of inner calm. The beauty is, these small actions, which might not seem significant in the moment, begin to shape how you see yourself and what you accept as normal in your life. We often don't feel like we're growing while we're growing. It's only when we look back that we recognize the moments that mattered, the hard conversations we had with ourselves, the uncomfortable boundaries we set, the decisions we made that were terrifying but necessary. And all of it began with the current version of you choosing something different, something better, even if you weren't sure where it would lead. Confidence doesn't come from pretending to be perfect. It comes from collecting evidence over and over again that you can trust yourself, and that evidence is being built every time you honor your own voice, every time you stand up for what you need, every time you choose to be honest with others, but especially with yourself. That quiet decision to live with more truth, that's how confidence grows, that's how peace settles in, and clarity. Clarity doesn't come from knowing everything in advance. It comes from movement, from taking steps, even uncertain ones, and paying attention to what feels right and what doesn't. It comes from asking questions, from observing your patterns, from choosing to not numb the discomfort, but instead sit with it long enough to learn something new. The clarity you want for your future, the understanding of what you deserve, where you're going, and who you are is being built by the uncomfortable lessons you're learning right now. So if you're questioning whether you're doing enough, if you're wondering when it will all start to make sense, let me remind you, it already is. Every quiet boundary you set, every honest choice you make, every time you show up when it would have been easier to disappear, it's all part of something much bigger than you can see right now. You don't need to become someone else to be worthy of peace or clarity or confidence. You just need to keep watering the seeds you're planting today with patience, with courage, and with the belief that what you're building matters. Because one day, without even realizing it, you'll wake up and feel it, that calm in your chest, that steadiness in your voice, that moment of quiet pride when you realize you did this, and it all started with the version of you who refused to give up. The version you are right now. Thank you.